Hey, what's up, everybody? Today is going to be a video called Grandmasters versus Owen's Defense. So we are only going to be looking at Grandmasters games versus the Owens Defense. What is the Owens Defense, right? For all you new players out there, right? The Owens Defense will begin E4 and B6. And this defense is named after the English vicar, John Owen. Okay, and what is a vicar? A vicar is basically someone in the Anglican Church that would collect money from the people on the behalf of the church, right? So he collected tithing, um, offerings, and such. All right, so John Owen was an English vicar, and what brought this opening to prominence was John Owen's victory with the black pieces over the legendary Paul Morphy while he was in his prime and making his tour of Europe. So this game that I'm going to skim over real quick is the game that kind of brought uh, this opening to prominence and caused it to surge in popularity for a few years. After all, Paul Morphy was a great chess genius, and then John Owen had defeated him with the black pieces. Now, mind you, this was just a casual game, and after John Owen defeated Morphy in this game, they actually had a match, and it was an odds match where Paul Morphy gave Owen a pawn and moves odds, and John Owen didn't win one single game. So after this casual loss in this game, Paul Morphy just went into beast mode and basically destroyed John Owen. But this is the game. Just gonna skim through it real quick before we get into our modern look at this opening. Again, we're only going to be going over Grandmaster games and just victories, so no draws. So there's a lot of games, and we're not going to go into deep analysis, but we're just going to go into a cursory analysis where we go over the games rapidly. So you can kind of pick up on the major themes of the opening, and you can determine for yourself whether the opening is quote unquote good or bad. But what can't be disputed is the results of the opening and the usage of it at the Grandmaster level. All right, and I'll give my conclusion at the end. But first, I just want to show this game because, again, this is probably the reason why the Owens defense became um, uh, relevant at this period in time. So this game took place in 1858 in London. Um, E4, B6, D4, Bishop B7, Bishop D3, which is still played today. Knight C3, of course, is playable to protect the E pawn, but Bishop D3 lends some more flexibility. Uh, Knight C3, um, we know E6 is coming, and that usually plays into Black's hands where he can pin the knight with Bishop B4. So some players like to have the opportunity to fortify their center with C3. Morphy plays this move knight H3, which is seen now and then. Again, it's the same thing, developing the piece because we know Morphy was the king of rapid development, developing the piece, but at the same time leaving the option to move the F pawn. Perhaps he might want to play F3 at some point, or even F4, F5 at some point. Again, the center and the integrity of the center is of utmost importance to Morphy here. C5. So Owen takes the opportunity to attack this pawn. Right? It's not defended. And now C3 from Morphy. Now, the positive side of this is that yes, he protects his the integrity of the pawn center, but it's a little slow, right? C3 doesn't do anything really for development, and it holds back the knight actually, so kind of hinders development in that it keeps the knight from going to its most natural square on c3. So the only positive is really that it's just reinforcing the center. All right, so it's kind of passive, and this is the type of play that black could appreciate. An interesting idea here for white is d5, just gambiting a pawn here. But c3, and again we're gonna move rapidly. So c takes was played, knight c6, and just to let you know, black's job here is to basically demobilize the center and then attack it and tear it down and prove that it is weak. If white center becomes mobile, then it's dangerous. As long as white center is basically a stiff entity um, and a non-moving target, then black is going to have a fine game. So basically what white usually tries to do is consolidate its center and then mobilize it, and basically use his space and control of those important central squares to blow uh, black off the board. So black must be active since he is giving up the center, and this is basically the ideology underlying all the hypermodern defenses. When white is allowed to build up a massive center, you have to be aggressive, um, and not let white just settle, get his pieces out, support his center, and because then you'll just be stuck in a cramped position. So bishop e3, knight b4, immediately attacking the bishop here. Knight c3. Now knight takes d3, queen takes g3, bishop b4 again. There's constant pressure on the center. Castle for Morphy. Bishop takes, b takes, and here Morphy again. He's starting to consolidate his position here. Nice center, right? And this is exactly what he wants. Knight f6, and you can see black still trying to attack. Now two moves possible here: e5 and f3. F3 is super solid, and I actually like that even better here. This is basically telling black that your idea of destroying the center has failed, and then black basically has to kind of adopt another plan. Basically, at the f3, I mean, what is he gonna do? Okay, castle, and then white could play a move like a4. The idea of a5 here. Is white winning here? No, but he has a comfortable position, right? Any strong player would take this position. Is white. So back to the game. Knight f6. e5 was played instead. Decent move. However, it did create some holes in the position here. But Morphy saying, look, I'll have c4 at some point. Okay, so knight d5, and there it is, c4. He's not really concerned about the bishop up here, obviously. And here Owen plays bishop a6. Another option was just knight takes e3, and this seems good for black as far as equalizing is concerned. After all, if f takes e3, castles, let's say a4, f6, and just do white just doesn't have enough mobility, okay, with this center, right, to really pose black a threat. The fact that it's just a target like that, black just will gradually just begin to tear down the center here. It's just a sample how things can go. And you can see the center is not mobile, so therefore it's not dangerous. So if anything, learn that it's not about having the pawns actually in the center, but they must be mobile. Okay, once they become static and fixed, they just become liabilities and targets for your opponent to attack. So, and instead of f takes e3 here, queen takes e3 is possible. Again, just simply castle. With the similar themes of attacking the fixed center, with moves like d5, for example, so on. So Owen didn't choose to play knight takes e3. He went for bishop a6, which puts this annoying pin on the knight. But it has a similar result in that the center is fixed. It's hard for white to really mobilize it. Bishop d2, rook c8, rook ac1, and we had this struggle here. So castle, queen b3. Morphy gets out of the pin, and knight e7. So now again, black has to be careful that the center does not become mobilized. Sorry about that. Bishop b4. So Morphy puts this pin on, and now Owen plays rook e8, getting out of the pin, and Morphy plays a normal looking move, rook fd1. But this allows knight f5, and again, it's really hard for white to really do anything with this center. For example, say if he tried to do d5, then look, the e pawn is weak. You see? And that's how that works. So that means, again, the center is basically a liability that white is forced to kind of maintain as opposed to using it as an attacking device. So what does Morphy try to do to solve this problem of lack of central mobility? Well, he lashes out on the king side. He plays g4. However, we can see that this severely weakens the king side. Knight h4. And now he plays f4. So he solidifies his problem with e5. But as soon as he does that, Owen plays f6, hitting the center. So now bishop e1, attacking the wandering knight. F takes e5. Now the knight is protected again by the queen. D takes e5. And Owen plays queen e7. Bishop b7 is probably even stronger here, just acknowledging that the bishop has done his job already. Oops, sorry. Done his job already on this diagonal and just coming back. And notice how powerful bishop becomes by coming back to b7. Instead, he played queen e7, getting off the same line as the rook, which is a common sense move. Morphy plays knight to g5 here. h6 and knight e4. So this looks very good for white, with the idea, of course, of just landing the knight in here. And now he plays bishop b7, getting on this long diagonal. At this point, Morphy probably could have secured a nice game with bishop takes h4. Basically, the idea behind this is to remove the threats of around the king side. As we discussed earlier, the king side is a little suspect for white, right? With the pawns advanced, the king is kind of open. You have this bishop on b7, right? Very powerful diagonal. And it's high time to kind of remove the pieces now. And let's say after queen takes h4, knight d6. And again, there's tactics here. It looks like white is just winning here, but it's not that simple because of the exposure of the king. So for example, after this move, knight d6, rook f8. And you might say, well, why can't he just take the bishop? Well, he can, but after knight takes b7, rook takes f4. And now you have this problem here, right? And if, let's say, you play h3, for example, to protect, then just rook c8. And all of a sudden, black has a guaranteed draw here. Let's say at the rook f1, then you just take here. And you have a perpetual. So just like that, all is lost. Another example, variation, knight takes c8, right? Rook takes f4, and now white is lost. Again, after h3, queen f2 check, mate. Again, just a sample line. So it's not as easy as just hopping the knight in there, because although white has a positional superiority, right, as far as the weak squares and his advanced knight is concerned, his king side is so weakened that it offsets his advantage. So black has a dynamic advantages where white has the static advantages. This dictates that white strategy should be to try to consolidate and trade down. So instead of knight d6, Morphy plays queen d3 to simply put in more pressure here on the d file and protecting the knight. Rook f8. So you can see the strategy of black, which is to play kind of in a dynamic fashion here. Bishop takes h4, queen takes h4. So you can see Morphy's thinking, and now he plays knight f6 check. Rook takes, e takes, and now queen takes g4. Again, the king is in danger. Morphy figured he has it under control here. He plays queen g3 and go into this ending. And now bishop c6 protecting the d pawn. F takes g7, king takes g7, and here white to me has a advantage, good position here. White is up the exchange. He's down a pawn, but he should have no problem converting this game being Morphy. But who knows the situation? Maybe Morphy had a few drinks. You never know. Game continued. King f2, king f6, and now Morphy played a natural looking move g4 here. Now, probably better was a move like rook d2, but instead of going over, a dry variation, the basic strategy here is that white needs the position to be open. He needs some open files um, for his rooks to shine. All right, so that's the basic problem in this position. So any variation that I'll show here is basically with that in mind, because that's white's general strategy. If the files aren't open, then his rooks can't really dominate the position, right? Him having the extra exchange means nothing if he can't move around with his rooks. So in this variation, where I show rook d2, have that in mind. So for example, rook d2, and of course, let me mention that black wants the opposite. Black wants to shut down the movement of the rook, so he wants to keep things as bogged down as possible with all of these semi closed files. So rook d2, h5, right? Rook c3, king f5. Again, this is a sample variation. Rook e3, let's say rook h8, and now rook e5. Check, king e6, rook g5, d5, for example. h4 is also possible, but I'm just showing d5 to illustrate the point. C takes d5, and let's say bishop d5, and now rook c2. And you can see now that the rook is on the open c file and has a chance of penetrating the position here. Now let's contrast that with what happened in the game. So after king f6, Morphy played g4. All right, it looks like a good move on the surface because it hinders the movement of the king, right? And gains space in the position. Owen plays h5, and now Morphy plays g5 check, king f5, and now Morphy plays king e3, protecting the pawn. Right now, here's the issue. Again, there's no open files for the rooks to dominate. Okay, so Morphy's made it more difficult for his rooks to show this superiority in the position. Meanwhile, this white bishop is very powerful on this diagonal here, and black has a passed pawn to boot now that Morphy has to keep an eye on. So he goes to king f5 here. King g3 might have been a little better in order to at least keep an eye on this pawn. Again, after king g3, e5, for example, f takes, king takes g5. Again, notice how the variation I show allows the rooks to get into the game. Rooks need open files. If they don't have open files, they're not as valuable. Rook f7, bishop f5, rook f1, bishop e6, check. And again, just to show you the penetration of the rooks in the position are very important. So let's go back to the game. So Morphy, instead of playing king g3, he played king e3. So this is important because the king is in the center, but this pawn has to be watched. If you are familiar with the teachings of Aaron Nimzovich, he called the passed pawn a criminal, right? That needed to be captured and locked away, right? He was he was over the top with his you know analogies and metaphors about the passed pawn, but a lot of it is true. You might see the passed pawn here and be like, oh, it's far away from queening, and next thing you know, the pawn is here, and now you're in trouble. And I'm sure that's happened to you at certain points, right? Next thing you know, the passed pawn is on the seventh rank, and you're like, oh my goodness, I can't stop it, right? Passed pawn can be very sneaky. So back to the game. So king e3, h4. See, there it goes. So Owens pushes rook d2, h3, and look at that, just like that. Oh my God, what are we gonna do? So now instead of the rooks being very powerful and on open files, positions bogged down, rook is blocked in. Bishop g2, rook c2, and this is even worse now because d5. And notice the rook is vulnerable here. He's gonna just drop a pawn. Morphy plays g6 here. All right, possibly hoping for a move like king takes g6, right? And then Morphy can give up the exchange here, right? Let's say rook h takes, check here, right? And say after that, you can play this move here, and a move like that, king e6. I'm sorry, not king f6, but king e6, protecting the pawn, which is more realistic. And now rook g6. And as you can see, black is still better, being a pawn up, but white at least has a lot of activity and has a good chance of drawing this ending right here. In contrast, going back to the game, Owen did not fall for this idea of king takes g6. Instead, he played d takes c4 first. Okay, so he secured the pawn here. Morphy pushed, and now Owen played rook g8, and now Morphy decides to give up the exchange, but it's a bit too late here. Rook c2, rook takes g7, rook takes c4, and rook g3, king e4, and rook a3, rook c2, and rook a4 check, and Morphy resigned at this point, right, in lieu of a dreadful end game. Okay, so that is how the Owens defense became popular. That game, of course, went around the world right at that time. Of course, a little slower back then, right? There was no planes, so people were on people were on horseback and slower methods of transportation on boats and things like that, and using couriers and things like that. But the word got around. The great Paul Morphy was defeated, and if you look at the charts, you will see this is like the peak of the popularity of this opening in late 1850s and the 1860s. All right, and then eventually it had its drop off. But so what we're gonna do is we're gonna end this video. So this is gonna be like part one. because this video ran kind of long, but I wanted to go over this foundational game in the Owens defense. And in part two, we are going to go right into Grandmasters versus the Owens defense. So I hope to see you around for part two. If you like this video, please like and subscribe. Help me out with the algorithm so that my videos can be seen more prominently on YouTube. And also donate to my channel if you like these videos also. And again, stick around for part two, which will be entitled Grandmasters versus the Owens defense. See you later.